All right, you go ahead. Good morning. My name is Chris Robinson, and this is my second year in the ISM program. This year, I'm studying a variety of topics. The first semester, I did kind of architecture and landscape architecture. And the second semester, I'm studying prairie restoration and land management. I originally was interested in wildlife biology, but my mentor does more prairie restoration and land management at the Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area, which I'll explain on more later. So my focus kind of shifted more towards land management and prairie restoration. As you can see by my title, it's kind of all falls under the general topic of environmentally conscious life. And that's really just living your life conscious of the environment that we live in and realizing that the land is where we get all of our resources from and where we build our houses on and grow our food on. So we need to be very aware of what we're doing to the land and how the land is reacting to us to make sure that we have plenty of resources and a viable and livable land to live on for generations and generations to come. The quote that I selected for this year comes from Ecclesiastes, and it is, "What do people gain from all of their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever." So like I said earlier, the fact that we need to make sure that the land can last for generations and generations to come, because us as a generation, we only stay on the earth for relatively around 70 to 80 years. And in the whole timeline of the earth, that's just a very small section. So we need to make sure that the earth, as far as in the big scheme of things, is viable to live on for any future generations that come onto the earth. Just a little picture to show kind of how we hold the world in our hands and work to be stewards of the earth, because as a human species, we are the top of the food chain and the top of the intellectual chain. So all the decisions that we make as a human race really are the biggest impact on the world. And we can see that through global warming and the effects that the production of gasoline and the emissions of CO2 from our cars and through grazing cattle have done to the atmosphere and the ozone layer. So as far as the ISM program, we are to interview professionals in the area that we have our interest in. And I interviewed actually 5 people, but these are the 4 that pertain to the work I did in the first semester. One of them, Ron Salmarsi, I actually interviewed last year, but I figured I might as well go back to talk to him again, one, just to solidify the connection that we had, and because when I interviewed him last year, he had some good information for me, so I felt like I could use that information they provided for me again this year. I also interviewed Travis Cisneros, who is a design director at Aquaterra Outdoors. They do landscape architecture. More so, they do backyards and front yards of homes and high-end clientele. So mostly people that live in like the Highland Park area or wealthier zip codes. And he actually doesn't have a major in landscape architecture. He has a major in computer graphics, and that's because as the design director at Aquaterra Outdoors, he does more of the 3D design, whereas Ron Salmarski, who's the design director at Perkins Wills Dallas, actually does designing of buildings. So even though it's the same title, they have 2 different job descriptions. Dudley Raymond is the landscape architect for the city of Frisco, and he doesn't do design. He does more of the business side. He makes sure that the contractors are doing the right job, and he makes sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing on the job. That way the job can get done and we can have the parks and the municipal centers and the right vegetation around those areas and around the schools in a timely manner. And then Sumit Patel, he owns his own design studio, and before he had worked for a number of different landscape architecture companies. And then when the economy crashed in 2008, he was let go from one of the firms that he worked for, and so he decided to start his own design studio. And so far, he's really enjoying that. He said that he probably would go back to a firm if he had the opportunity, but for right now, he's enjoying being able to choose his own projects and have his own touch on design. And from him, I learned, not really learned, but I guess it was kind of reassuring to see somebody else that is really more focused on the well-being of the people rather than the bottom line. Because for most architecture and landscape architecture, just like any other business, most firms are focused on the bottom line and making profit at the end of the day. They obviously want their buildings to look good and to feel good to the client so that they get more repeat business. But Sumit Patel is really more focused on the actual customer and their needs. For example, if the customer came to him with something that he doesn't have the expertise in, but he knew somebody else that could do the job for them, he would always recommend them to that other person so that regardless whether that he could do it, they had somebody that they could go to that he knew would do the job well. And then the fifth person I interviewed, who's also not up here, is my now mentor, Richard Freiheit, and he is the land manager for the Lake Lewisville Environmental Learning Area, which is right off of Business 121. And he, along with 2 or 3 other staff members at the Lake Lewisville Environmental Learning Area, and numerous volunteers, they are trying to restore what was prairie land around the area, because most of North Texas and Central Texas used to be prairie land, but when people started moving in, they took away the main contributor to what makes a prairie, and that's fire. And so when that fire was taken away, it allowed trees to grow, and that killed the grass on the ground, and so now it's more wooded areas. My research for the first semester was over design principles and design concepts that were, 1, sustainable, and 2, had a low to no impact on the environment and took no outside energy to use. One of the main 2 design principles I looked up was wind catchers, and wind catchers are very prevalent and originated in the Middle East. And what wind catchers do is they take air that is already blowing and they force it through the house through one entrance, and then through either multiple entrances or another entrance or exit in the house, it circulates the air throughout the house. That way, when the air comes in, it starts out cool. When it goes out the house, it carries all the humidity and the heat from the house, and it cools the house down. Because, as you know, it gets very hot in the Middle East, and those parts where they have it, it helps keep the house very cool. You can see on the left, that is a very basic wind catcher with just pure openings, and the one on the right is more of a modern take on it. It has diffusers on the bottom, so that way it has a more mechanical way of getting the air in and out to making sure that it's actually getting done, rather than having the simple one on the side where the wind may or may not get all of the heat out and into it. And then on the one on the right, it also has bird mesh and weatherproof louvers so that water and other precipitation can't get in. The second thing that and here's more pictures of wind catchers and actual practical application. Here's some from the Middle East, some in more of an Art Deco style, and then a modern one from the United States. The second design principle I looked up was in research was straw bale construction. And straw bale construction is the taking of straw bales, which are the byproduct of creating cereal, and taking those stalks and drying it out, and then the byproduct of that is hay, and then straw. And you take that straw and you bind it very tightly together into either medium-sized or bigger bricks, and then you stack those bricks either on top of each other, and then you create the walls, or you can put wooden frames into place and then put those straw bales into the wooden frames. That way you have a nicely insulated wall. And the straw bale walls, they actually have a higher insulation value than most of the man-made products, and they are also surprisingly more fire retardant than man-made products because of how tightly packed the straw bale is. There isn't any oxygen in the walls, so the fire doesn't have any fuel to burn the house down as fast. And so all this research accumulated in my original work for the first semester. And my original work was originally going to be to enter a design contest, but that design contest got postponed for quite a while. So I instead chose to take the research that I did and just create my own model using those design principles and design concepts. So I created a house that would be sort of in a southwestern context. So you can see right there, that's kind of more the local context I'm looking for, is an arid, drier climate to where they need that natural wind energy to come through instead of having to pay for air conditioning year round. And it's also very flat because I wanted the house to not be a 2-story house, but a 1-story house. That way there was less partitions and less movement the air had to make its complete circuit throughout the house. These are existing homes in the local context that I wanted. You can see they're very low and flat, and they have there's a lot of straight lines, there's a lot of curves to the houses. There's another one here. And so this is the actual house I designed. You can see on the very tops of the house there are the wind catchers. These 3 rooms right here are actually bedrooms, and so the house is separated into 2 parts. They have the bedrooms, and then you have a walkway through to the living room dining area. This wind catcher right here actually takes smoke that you would use that is produced from the oven and then flows it out through one side, and then the other side forces the air into the living room area. I utilized big long windows in this house to really capture the sunlight that can come through. You can always put blinds up as a natural way to block out that sun, but when you do want a lot of sun, when the sun's rising and the sun's setting, so you can kind of set your activities around it, it's nice to have those windows to get that sunlight in and have natural light instead of having to pay for lighting all of the time. Right here is a more up close look of the wind catcher. You can see the slots where the air is forced through. Here's a more up close shot of the bedroom areas. You can see they have the 3 windows. This one is the master bedroom, and then there's 2 smaller bedrooms. Here, right here, are kind of diffusers for sunlight for the walking area. You can see right here, so when people are walking through to the bedrooms, they don't have direct sunlight hitting down on them. It blocks it out and then creates shade for that walking area so it doesn't get as hot. And then here you can kind of see into the bedrooms. You see the beds and the bathrooms. And then the walls, I made it this color because it's supposed to represent the straw bale that the house is made out of. And then when you do straw bale construction, you have to plaster the walls with either a lime or kind of an adobe mix. That way there's no moisture that can get into the walls, because if moisture gets into straw bale walls, then it starts to mold really bad, and then you have to tear down the house, and then you have to build another house, and no one wants to do that. Now a little bit about what I'm doing in the second semester. In the second semester, as I said in the beginning of my presentation, I'm doing prairie restoration and land management. My mentor works at the Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area, and this is kind of it's a 2,000 acre plot near Lake Louisville. You can see here the Trinity River actually starts in Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area, and they kind of can control the water flow from the Louisville Environmental Learning Area. Also by there is the Army Corps of Engineers, and they have various aquatic experiments that they set up around the area to test either invasive plant species and how they can reduce that amount in Lake Louisville, or the introduction of fish into Lake Louisville to eat any invasive plants, or the zebra mussels that are so prevalent in Lake Louisville nowadays. Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area also has activities for kids and the local community to come in and volunteer and to help them with the prairie restoration and maybe sight birds or walks around the mini trails that they have there. And the main goal that they have at the Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area is to engage the community in that little plot of natural beauty they have there, to make people aware of the fact of that there is so much natural beauty in the environment, and that when we develop a bunch of the land to make new homes or office buildings that sometimes don't get used, it really takes away from what used to be there and takes away habitats from the animals that we have living by us, which in turn makes them start to live near and near us, and no one wants that because they start to fear the animals, and the animals like coyotes or bobcats will eat their dogs or their cats, or deer will come and eat their plants in their garden. During the second semester, I hope to learn from my mentor, Mr. Freiheit, really how to engage people in the environment and help them to open their eyes to what we have in front of us and how to take care of it and make sure that the land is there for future generations going forth. Thank you.
Was it 15?